Hello everybody, here we are today doing our season preview over the Anaheim Ducks, talking about what exactly is this team supposed to be this year. So before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So last season, Anaheim finished with 59 points on the year and failed to make the playoffs for what? I think the sixth straight season, and they were able to say that their season was an improvement in terms of the standings as they went from 58 points to 59, but still not a very good improvement there. This team is very weird because, again, while their playoff expectations certainly weren't there last season, they still were hoping to see something, and I know that this side is probably not ready to make that playoff push just yet, but I think that at times last year was a little bit concerning to see how bad they were for stretches, and you start to wonder exactly what are they going to do here. And this was an offseason that wasn't really filled with a lot of those inspiring moves. So for Anaheim, I think that a lot of people aren't expecting much again this year, and we have to wonder what exactly are some storylines for the Ducks to follow for this season. So the first storyline is talking about whether or not the Ducks can be better fundamentally. This team has been bad, and they're expected to be bad. They're supposed to be bad. This side has been filled with a roster that probably shouldn't be able to compete, and that's fair, aside from when they had that good first half of the season a couple of years ago. But at the same time, too, being bad because you lack talent is one thing, but another thing is just being bad in a lot of basic ways. They were a team that was pretty bad defensively. They took a lot of penalties, and that's kind of where I have an issue with this. They weren't a great team defensively in a lot of categories, but the PK in particular was pretty bad as they allowed 91 goals when they had guys in the box last season. And I think the second worst team in the entire league was the Minnesota Wild with 67. So 91 compared to 67. That is a big difference right there. They were a team that in part made life very difficult for the goalies because of that, but also they took a lot of penalties. They led the league in penalty minutes as well as time on ice per game played when they had guys in the box. So again, just being better at those basic things, not taking penalties, making life easier for yourself and your goalies are going to be fundamental to being better. They don't have to be superstars, as again, it's going to be harder to get results in the other end of the ice in terms of getting goals and whatnot. But you are going to make it a lot easier for yourself physically by not having to be strained by having to play a lot of minutes on the PK, and your goalies are probably going to be able to feel a little bit better as well over the course of a long season. And that's why I just say, don't take so many stupid penalties. They had, I think, 3 or 4 guys in the top 20 for penalty minutes last season. Those are things that are relatively avoidable. I know some people say, well, some of these guys are brought in to protect the players. To some extent, I get it, but to another extent, no, I just can't see how that's going to be valuable when you are just surrendering buckets of goals against it for a team that is trying to probably improve a little bit. This is something you'd say, we cannot be the worst in the league again for something like this because this is something that is so avoidable. So the second storyline is talking about what would another bad season mean. And for Anaheim, it's kind of interesting, and I'm talking more about the 60-ish point range. Looking at the Ducks, this is a side that is closing in kind of on a decade without any playoff appearances. And this year, really, the results aren't expected to change a whole lot as they are expected to be a team that's far out of a playoff position. And that's not something that fans are probably too excited about, as I know people say they are in a rebuild. But at some point, you have to wonder what exactly is going wrong. Why aren't we seeing results? Why is this taking nearly 10 years to do a rebuild? And how exactly are things going to change? Because you have a lot of these prospects that have already been able to play at the NHL level, and yes, they are still trying to figure out how they're going to perform at this high end, and they still have a lot of prospects that are expected to come up, but at the same time too, especially with the roster we're seeing right now, they aren't anywhere near to possibly being done with this rebuild. And I know, again, there's probably expected to be a longer timeline for this rebuild, but at a certain point, fans have the right to say, when are things going to change? When are we going to see results? And how are we going to get there in a timely manner? Because it's not fair to them to have to wait, 10, 15 years to see a playoff team. So I think that if things go poorly again this year and are really on that more disastrous end, there's going to be a lot of changes that aren't going to be good for a lot of people. What exactly it all entails, I can't really say at the moment. But for Anaheim, I would like to see some improvement. Again, fundamentals getting better and just seeing an improvement in the standings in terms of points. All going to be things that lead to say, okay, we might actually be on the right track. And even though you say, have we botched a rebuild, or how long is this thing going to actually take? Because it's getting to be a little bit old being bad. The third and final storyline is talking about what about the old guys? You're looking at guys like Radko Gudas, Frank Vetrano, Alex Killorn. Some of these players were brought in for Anaheim to bring in that experience and to be possibly helping out those younger guys and provide some stability. His tale is old as time, and that's fair. But some of these players are probably going to be on their way out as they have expiring contracts. And on top of that too, it's pretty clear that these guys aren't going to be able to help out the team too much in the moment. So I think, to be honest with ourselves here, if they really are going to have another bad year, why keep a lot of these veteran guys around when you can ship them out? And my thing here to look at this is say, why would you trade necessarily to get picks when you could get maybe prospects? I think for Anaheim at this stage, you don't necessarily have to have those high-end picks when maybe you could get those more enticing young players that could be ready to make their NHL debut or even be in a spot where they are somewhat NHL ready. They've got some games. You kind of have a good idea about what they could be to help this process along a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that it's the end-all be-all with some of these contracts, as again, Anaheim is a team that I don't think has spent a whole lot of money just yet, but with some of these guys, you understand that they aren't really providing a whole lot to the team, and they are just being given these contracts because the Ducks feel like, hey, we've got to be able to do what we can do, get some pieces, as again, we can't just have a group of 18 to 20-year-olds and just see them get butchered in the NHL landscape over the course of a whole year. And I know the older guys might be a fan favorite to some extent for the fans, as there's not a whole lot to cheer for, and it is kind of nice to see some older faces that have been able to be brought over where you say, well, at least we can have somebody that's interested in coming on over here. But I would say that you want to be able to see a return for these guys instead of seeing them walk away or just be a net negative. And I would like to think that if the team is better in the future, they could see that they were a part of that through a trade. They could say that we brought value for the team, maybe not in the now, but in the coming years when things kind of get turned around a little bit, you could say, oh, well, the trade for this player by shipping out an older guy was part of the reason we were able to make the playoffs this year, as this younger player came in and provided a good role for us on the third line, or he was able to do well on the PK, whatever the situation is. And that's why I think with the old guys this year, they might not be as safe as some people would expect. But two, I think some of these guys, the Ducks are just like, well, they're on the roster. It's okay. We won't really do a whole lot, as again, we're not ready to do much just yet. So overall, what are my thoughts on Anaheim? They are a team that, if you couldn't tell already, I feel like probably won't make the playoffs again, and that's not necessarily their fault. I don't think the expectations right now are anywhere near the playoffs for just about everybody looking at this team. Again, they're struggling to find their identity in some ways. Again, like we talked about already, Trevor Zegras, is he going to be part of the future? Maybe, maybe not. They have some other guys too. We're starting to wonder a little bit how things will look and how bad things really will be. I do expect the year to be, kind of like a roller coaster, but probably more lows than highs. But again, there should be some highs to make you feel about confident about how things are going and feel like some of these younger players are going to be part of this future where you are competing and winning games and getting back to where the Ducks were before, because for a long time, Anaheim was a relatively competitive team, and they were knocking on the door of possibly going to the Stanley Cup final and winning it again during some of those 2010 runs. And I think that in general, you're going to be watching out for some things like the Cutter Gauthier trade and how that all plays out. As again, you've got Drysdale that's over in Philly. Gauthier wanted out of Philly. If he performs well in Anaheim, things are all smiles and sunshine and happiness. If he performs poorly or has a bad attitude, then people start to say, man, things just really don't seem to be going well for us at the moment, and it's been like this for a while now. When is this dark cloud going to be able to go away? And I'm also wondering too what this team can do to try to improve for the future, whether that be unorthodox or orthodox methods, as they are trying to be able to climb out of the basement in the Pacific especially and get back to where they were competing with those teams like LA back in the day and whatnot. I don't exactly know how long this is going to take. I'm going to be honest here. If they have another truly bad year, I'm starting to worry a bit about how much longer this is going to be. And I don't want to be too pessimistic here, but for the entirety of the channel, the Ducks really haven't been able to do a whole lot. And that's where I'm starting to say, is this going to be something that in 2 or 3 years they're right there or not? Because at 10 years, you start to say, man, we haven't made the playoffs in 10 years. A lot of people can say, oh, my life was like this the last time this happened. That's not what you want unless it's in a positive way about, oh yeah, the Ducks have won 3 championships over the past 10 years. What was my life like when we last won the Cup? Instead, we're talking about this in a way where it's like, man, that 2007 Cup win sure does feel like a while ago. So anyway, sorry for the pessimistic outlook for the Ducks for this season. Let me know your thoughts down below for Anaheim. Will they be able to shock people a little bit? Will some of these younger guys be able to provide a little bit of a surge for the team? And will they be able to improve? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Hey, have a great night. And you go love hockey, alright? Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.